From the panel, we will welcome Grant Engelbrecht. Thank you very much.
All right, sounds good. Everyone can hear me? Thank you, everyone, and certainly welcome to the Speakeasy. My name is Grant Engelbrecht. I am from Dynatrace, not Dynatrace, but continuous integration, continuous delivery. I was trying to find a graphic that spoke to that topic. One of the things I came up with was this graphic, which the translation is, this is not a pipe. When we talk about continuous integration and continuous delivery, we're looking at a pipeline, really. Code in, deliverables out the back end. But what it is, though, is when they say this is not a pipe, it's in the true sense, it's not. It's a depiction, or the artist's depiction of what a pipe looks like. If you didn't know what a pipe was and someone said, well, that's a pipe, you would take their word for it. So when we talk about continuous delivery, when someone says, well, continuous what? This is a graphic that comes up for continuous delivery and continuous integration. And it's a busy slide, because what it is still a concept. There are so many different models of continuous integration and continuous delivery. Everyone says we have CI/CD, and then when you scratch the surface, what does that mean? People say, it's DevOps. Fantastic. I have DevOps, and you have DevOps, but we don't speak the same language. We have the same goals, and really that is what we're trying to achieve in continuous delivery. We talk about continuous, my slide there, it says continuous what? Because it's continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous improvement. And really what we're looking at is continuous monitoring. Between those different stages that you have between development, between unit testing, between functional testing, acceptance testing, and then performance testing, and then finally production, you have these quality gates. And really these gates are where Dynatrace sit. The ability to monitor and deliver key metrics to provide what we call feedback loops. Again, these are buzzwords that we see in the industry today. And they're often overused terms. And DevOps is probably the most overused term in the last, I would say 5 years. But, I read a book, which is strange. Actually, I read an ebook. Let me put it in modern context. I read an ebook called DevOps for Mainframes. And I thought, well, okay, fantastic. DevOps has finally made it into last century, which is great. When we look at continuous monitoring, we have these feedback loops, and certainly as we go between stages, we want to have reliable metrics. And Dynatrace provides that integral part in providing common metrics between each stage, that if I say my metric between unit testing and my metric when I'm monitoring my performance in production, they should be the same, so that when I go and have that feedback back to my developer, it's the same metric. I can't say my performance is slow. What I want to say is my performance is slow compared to a baseline or benchmark metric that is common between you and I. That's what we provide. And with continuous integration, there has to be commonality, and looking at integrating with build architecture or build infrastructure. And certainly when we have build infrastructure, we talk about with Office, cloud monitoring as well, that build infrastructure is no longer just on-premise. It is anywhere. The most, besides DevOps, my most common bugbear is people saying it's in the cloud. Fantastic. What does that actually mean? No one actually knows what the cloud is, and a lot of people don't actually know what the cloud does, but it's in the cloud, so you can trust it. The other one that we're looking at for test automation, being able to continuously monitor testing. When you have a developer commit code, you want to be able to say, I've committed the code, and this is what it delivers. When I ran my first test, it failed. Okay, what did you do? I remediated the code, and it worked okay. I can now push that into production. When we look underneath the covers, we can see that the first part failed. The second part, where we fixed it, we've actually introduced more errors or more SQL statements. No idea why this is going fast. More SQL statements. So architecturally, while from an architectural perspective, you've broken the build. From a production release perspective, as far as your unit tester is concerned, you've delivered code that's ready to go into production. When you scratch the surface, if you deliver that code into production, you've got issues. And a lot of times, people say, that's okay. And I think there's a meme with that is out there and says, I don't test often, but when I do, it's in production. And that is really the worst place that you should be testing. Sometimes you do have to do it. Don't get me wrong. The only time you get production load sometimes, and certainly for cloud infrastructure and cloud delivered services, is in the cloud itself. So your performance testing should take that into account. You want to be able to scratch beneath the surface to give you those common metrics as you're doing your test to deliver accurate results and at a faster pace. And you can only achieve that with test automation. The other thing that you want to be able to do with test automation is deliver those metrics back to people in a common format, and one that makes sense. So you want to be able to say, my tester went through these different tiers, not just saying my test ran with whether it's functional performance or integration or unit testing. Every single metric looks the same. So when I run a unit test, I can say that my entry point into my first web service call took 25 seconds. Fantastic, that's what my performance testing will tell me. But when I go beneath the surface and actually look to see where my time and resource are being consumed, I can go with pinpoint accuracy to say, here's where the issue is. And not only that, you can compare the results between two individual runs or between two individual web service calls. And that's what I mean. When you scratch the surface or go beneath the surface of your testing, these are the metrics that you want to be able to deliver. The other thing with test automation is it doesn't matter how often you test if you can't compare it to something. A lot of times people say, we've run the regression test, we've run the integration test. Fantastic, it's passed, it's failed. Great. But unless you're actually looking at the trend to see where it is and how does it compare against past builds, you don't know what's broken the build, who's broken the build, or even if there is a break in the build. So again, test often, test everywhere. I heard that. I didn't steal it from you. I had you promise. But it is popular. The other thing is, with all the automation that you have and all the metrics that you deliver, you got to ask the right questions. These days, we have data smog or information overload. Everyone has a metric. I have a metric, you have a metric. What does it all mean? You want to be able to prioritize by asking the right questions. And there's no point asking the right questions if you don't have the right metrics to deliver the answer back to the audience. How is it impacting me? Who's it impacting me? What's actually impacted? When users say the system is slow, compared to what? Is that just an opinion, or do you actually have some objective data to come back to? You want to be able to say, when I have an issue, it's impacting these certain regions, whether it's in the Americas, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in Australia. Smiley faces, fantastic. Everyone loves icons. Who's satisfied with the service? If they're not satisfied, how do we know? Do I need to raise a severity 1 alert if it's only impacting one person? If that person happens to be the CEO or the CIO, probably. But really, if it's only impacting one person at midnight on a system that really isn't used, there's no point waking up a developer. Having been that developer that gets woken up at 3 a.m. just because someone forgot to mount a tape, it does hurt sometimes. When you scratch the surface to look at who those people are that are having issues, you want to be able to say, my frustrated users are coming across these devices. When we talk about continuous integration, continuous testing, continuous monitoring, the metrics that you deliver should be accurate. In the real world, you want to be able to say, I know who my users are. I know what devices they're using, especially in the cloud environment. You want to know who your audience is that you're reaching with your application. And at the end of the day, that is the service that you are delivering to an end user, whether that's internal or external. You want to know that when you test, you're covering every single device, every single operating system. You cannot do that in a test environment sometimes. And yes, I know some of the web developers out there can say, well, I can run a URL test, and I can change the user agent string, and I can fake it. That expression, fake it until you make it. Really? I can also throw it in production, and that gets me every single conceivable device and operating system combination. One of the jobs I did a device test, saw what came back, Windows, Macs, Chrome, Safari, and one lonely person that was accessing the website on a Nintendo DS. Now, when you run a site test, who the heck is going to test for that? By the way, his performance was fine. But again, how do you know? The idea is you want the data to allow you to prioritize correctly. Ask the right questions, base the feedback that you're giving back to your customers or to your developers on accurate data. The data that you get back should address all audiences, whether that's a business owner, whether that's a testing, or whether that's going to be your developers themselves. Have the right information at the right time to the right people in the right format. And lastly, we talk about continuous integration, we talk about continuous delivery, we talk about this shift left policy. And this has been around since, I want to say Moses was a kid, but really when I was doing mainframes. Shift left means catch the problem early. It's cheaper to catch it in dev than it is in production. That's a given. We've all seen the graphics that are out there. But really for continuous integration and continuous delivery, it does need a different mindset. You cannot fix a problem using the same mindset that created the problem. Sometimes you have to think differently. So a new set of eyes. One of the things that I recently read was a quote that said, You cannot, what was the quote? It was test often, test everywhere. What you cannot test, that was it. What you can't test, monitor. And one of my colleagues was reminding me of this. And that's what you have in place. It's continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous monitoring. You want to have the right information for the right people. You want to become predictive, advocate and empower. You want to be able to say to everyone that is looking at the production line of code delivery, they're empowered enough to pull the cord if there is an issue. When you read Jim Kim's book on the Phoenix Project, he talks about the Toyota production line where everyone can pull the and-on cord to stop the production line. And that they feel empowered, that they know that it's not going to be a frivolous event. They know they'll be taken seriously when they say there is an issue. Again, advocate, empower. You cannot deliver continuous integration from micromanagement. If you're micromanaging your CI/CD process, you're killing it. Really. There are a myriad of information that's out there. And here's an eye chart, and we will talk about it when I'm back on the stand. But really encourage you to go out there, have a look. CI/CD is here to stay. Please, embrace it. Otherwise, you're just going to get steamrolled by it. Thank you.
That was Grant Engelbrecht from Dynatrace.